and so I'm recording now. So what we just mentioned is kind of like an announcement. We're going to move that test through on Sunday instead of having it on the Wednesday, and that way we overcome the problem that we were sort of trying to dance around, which was the 1 hour class for a 2 hour exam. So we were talking about starting it earlier, and this way it's nice and clean, and we know that we got 2 hours, and that's what we're going to do. So that's good. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to talk about stress and burnout. Uh, I think it's probably kind of cool that we saved this topic till this point. Can you see the screen? Yeah, it says I'm screen sharing, so I hope you can see that. I think it's kind of cool that we saved this to this particular point of the course, because about now we all got a good idea what stress is. With the exams coming up in a couple weeks, we have an idea about stress. Now, speaking about exams, you know that you don't have an exam in this course. We used to, but that exam is gone. So now you've got this lovely little project that you guys are working on, and that is instead of a test. So I hope that works out okay for you. All right, and I got another assignment which I have to write, which I haven't given you yet, but you got two assignments, and there will be a third assignment coming, and you will see that soon. Okay, so we are going to talk about stress, and basically, stress is kind of a normal but abnormal thing, and it's pretty well been looked at a lot. I mean, some people say that our modern life is much more stressful than sort of a more simpler life, and it probably is because it tends to be a bit faster. We try to fit in a lot of stuff. If you think about it, hundreds of years ago, at nighttime people would relax and sleep because it costs a lot of money, or difficult to keep things lit. You had to burn some oil or something. Whereas nowadays people are out all night doing stuff and then work all day and not get enough sleep and not managing their time and basically under a lot of stress. Um, so what are things that we can do to reduce our stress? What is stress? What are things we can do to address our stress? And so some things we can do is organize ourselves, be aware of what we have to do, and set time to do it. That's something that is a challenge for a lot of people, including even people my age, find that a bit difficult. Um, the graph that I'm showing you now relates to stress, and I think that if you look at that, you'll realize that we have to sort of have a balance. So the idea here, and we've used colors to indicate uh, uh, stress as good or bad stress, or according to the amount. So we're measuring the amount of stress, and the idea being that stress free is not exactly ideal either. So if you had no stress in your life at all, or in your work or in your study, it's likely that motivation might be less, to the point where perhaps you wouldn't get much done. So that's indicated in this diagram here by the performance chart axis of the chart. If there's no stress, so we have the stress on the bottom and the performance going up the side. And if there's no stress, then there's no performance. And so as we add a little bit of stress, we find that we get to a point where um, our performance sort of peaks. But beyond that point, when we start adding more stress, we notice that our performance actually decreases to a point um, where we can actually have a breakdown. And a breakdown would be like a burnout is the term that was shown in that diagram, in the first image. So we want to avoid that. It's ideal to sort of stay in this area here, but some point below fatigue. So that's an area that we refer to as optimum stress. So optimum stress would be that you have some goals, that you recognize that every day there's something that you need to do to work toward those goals. There's a little bit of stress, all right, because you have something that you have to do, but it's not overwhelming. Those goals are achievable, and you can work toward them and achieve them, and therefore you're in an optimal stress environment. When we get to the point where the things that we have to do are beyond the time and ability that we have to do them, then we get into this overload and possibly into burnout. Some jobs sort of are typical to that. All right. So mentioning here a lot of isms or shins, whatever. The idea here is that any one of these things could lead to you having stress, or any one of these things could be the result of you having stress. So having stress sort of works into a a very bad sort of cycle that uh, that could be could be seen with these types of things. Is it possible for you to delay the deadline by 1 day? Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay, so that should reduce your stress, I hope. Um, these sort of list of things, I hope you see them there. They're all true. Think I would add some others. Basically any addictive sort of thing. So that's so some of the addictive things, immediately we jump to these sort of drug things. But and that's yeah, that's these things are destroying to you in physical and other ways. But they're not the only things, and some things that just seem that's okay. Maybe too much social media you could put into that thing, because we actually get a bit of a dopamine hit when we sort of go and look and post something on Twitter or whatever, and then we get a whole lot of likes or whatever. People, that's a kind of an addiction too. So just saying, in our modern world, there's even more things to sort of watch out for that can add to our stress. Those things actually add to our stress. Yeah, just again on the social media, one of the really good things for overcoming stress is getting enough sleep. It really kind of works. Getting enough sleep. And so what people have found is what we can do to make sure that we get enough sleep is have some exercise. If you sort of walk around a bit, quite a bit actually, then you find that you sleep better. The other thing is to in the evening not have too much blue light. And so some people will have some special glasses so that they filter out the blue light. So the blue light's coming from your screen, or you can put um, a special app on your screen to filter out the blue light. Or maybe and this is what I've found. You do what works for you. But what I found is my bedroom's upstairs, my computer's downstairs, my mobile phone's downstairs. When I go into my bedroom, the computer and the mobile phone, they don't come. You know what I mean? That is non-blue light time. That is low stress time. And yeah, so I mean, maybe that is something you can think about as well. And so here we have some different sources of stress. And so now we're not talking about, I mean, I have people here worrying about their assignments and stuff like that. That's obviously a form of stress. I think we would put that into a situational stress thing, whereas, and we'll define each of these in a minute. But here are three different areas that we bring stress into our life, where stress comes into our life. These may be where they came from. So the first one there is institutional stress. That is the type of business that you have produces stress for the people that work in that business. Or in other words, you could say people in this particular business often have stress, and that's because of the nature of the business. And so I guess I could say being a student, okay, so that's kind of like a business. Maybe that has people who are students often find themselves stressed, and that's because the nature of being a student involves stress. Other salespeople, I don't know. Some people say teachers, a policeman. Depending on where you're being a policeman, I suppose. But a soldier or whatever. These types of job, air traffic controller or a pilot. A doctor. The nature of the job just has some stress that comes with it, and we tend to find that people working in that job have a um, are exposed to a lot of stress. Um, so situational stresses, they could come, they could be because of a deadline. All right. So At the end of the semester, I have a test on such and such a day. That's a situational stress. And they're like institutional stressors, but they can come, uh, they can be sort of regular or irregular, and they're not sort of where your institutional stressor is sort of just something because of where you work or because of where you are. Your institutional stressor is a bit more specific. It's not just because of where you work or where you are, but because of a particular event. Now, this course is supposed to be about the service desk, so I hope that you can see that that reflects to them. You know, imagine you're on the phone. People come on the phone. A lot of the time, they're not happy, and so because they're not happy, they often they often relate to people. And we talked about this in the section where we were talking about dealing with difficult customers. Well, why are they difficult? It's not like they woke up in the morning and said, you know, I want to be difficult with people today. It's not like that. You know, it's more like something happened and they were frustrated. So what we know in just our ordinary psychology is that we are we like to achieve things in our just our daily life. And I'm not talking about high achievement stuff, but you know, you get in your car and you want to go from downtown Doha to wherever, right? And if you get there without stopping, without any traffic lights or anything like that, you'd probably that would be a positive experience, right? But if you get stopped every 2 minutes and then you have to wait because there's an accident for an hour, you might not feel so good. And part of the reason why is because, hey, you know, you have in your mind at this moment, you're goal oriented. You want to get to there. And this stuff is stopping you. That makes you feel bad. Something that stops you from getting what you want makes you feel bad. And so in the service desk, that's what's happening, right? I mean, the people are on the phone. Why? Because something they wanted to happen with the computers didn't happen. So now they feel bad. And so they're probably not going to necessarily relate in a way that they would even plan unless they are very careful about that. So I mean, some people just are positive all the time somehow. But that takes a bit of thinking and doing it. And actually, that's what we're trying to do in the service desk also, is to be like that. All right. But so here's some things that may bring stress on us. And I hope this is, and, and have a look at those. These things could be for us, but they could also be for our customers, right? They have lots of things that are going to add stress to them. And, but we're looking at it from our point of view, particularly because this is something that we have to manage. We have to manage our own stress and keep it so that we stay healthy and so that we stay productive. Yeah, so bearing in mind that all of these things could lead to stress on us. Uh, then the other side of things is the personal stressors. And so I'm reminded of something that I saw here. So personal stressors, you know, I mean, like the worst thing that could possibly happen, you know, is something happens to somebody in your family that you really care about. And I think you know what I mean by that, right? That is just a terrible stress. And if that happens to you, then probably it's going to be kind of hard to be working for a day or two or you know weeks. So that's just a terrible stress that happens in a person's life. But there's other things that happen in a person's life, and we look at it and we say, "Oh, that's really nice," you know. But it also could be stressful. So what I just mentioned, you know, say you have a death in the family or something like that, that's a terrible, terrible stress. But what about a marriage? What about having a baby? Uh, what about moving to a new house? Getting a new job? You know, moving to a new city? Uh, Also, all of those things that I just mentioned, we like those. Yeah, that's awesome. You know, I just had a baby, you know, that's an awesome thing, right? But it's also very, very stressful. And so that's something that we have to look at. So, I mean, we welcome those things into our lives because they make us happy, but they also can be very stressful. You know, starting a new job, you know, just starting a new degree, very stressful. And so, those are things that we've found. We like having a baby, yeah, but it's a lot of stress. But you know, having a baby is stress, but it's only stress for like about 30 years, you know. Then it gets better. No, I'm just kidding. It's all good stress. um, so the point here is that you could have a person. Imagine, they got institutional stress because they work in a help desk. Help desk is a stressful place. Then they got a situational stress because a very angry customer came in today, and so that added some stress to them. And then this afternoon, they're going to move into their new house with their new baby. Wow, they're under a wee bit of stress. Okay, so you see what I'm saying, right? So those are layers of stress on stress, and we have to sort of, how do we manage that? How do we manage that? So here's some things that we can do. Do we like the business we're in? Maybe this job, especially while I've got this new baby here, right? Maybe this job, I need to dial it back a bit. Maybe I shouldn't be sort of just talking to angry people all the time. uh, maybe there's some things in our personal life, and as a professional person, we don't sort of bring our our personal life to work and sort of flash it around a lot. That if we recognize that if everybody did that at work, it would be very hard to work. So we sort of keep it dialed down a bit, but we do recognize how it's affecting us, and so we take when we're not at work, we're adjusting that to make it so that our stress levels are good. So I mean, when I talk about that personal life stuff, that's why we have weekends, right? I mean, go and do something that you really enjoy doing. You do that and you come back to work and, hey, you're enjoying it, and other people notice that, and notice that you're more productive. Um, some people even that you can do a Google search on this if you want, but there's an argument among some people that people should have a 4-day week or something like that. And the argument is that, okay, well, yeah, you're not at work as much, or at least not as many times in a week, but the fact that you have this time where you can just unwind and totally de-stress for a few days, means that when you do come into work, you're just that much more productive. Anyways, there's a lot of research on that. I don't know what to say about that. Different countries even have different approaches to that. I mean, so what I mean by that is, if you went to Europe and you get a job working somewhere, you're going to get your 4 or 5 weeks holiday a year. If you went to the United States, you're not going to get 4 or 5 weeks holiday a year unless you've been working at a place for like 5 or 6 years. People
Mr.
working in
Mark,
ordinary jobs are getting 2, 3. Yeah. Okay. So yes,
Mr. Mark, I have a question.
go.
Does COVID fall under the category of environmental stressors?
Or personal stress. Okay. So I I guess it would, because it affects everybody, right? So I mean, that's an ongoing stress, isn't it? Isn't that an interesting question about COVID and
Yeah, I
stress?
see.
Because so I mean, the point that you're making there, it's a huge stress on all of us, isn't it? I mean, took us a while, to get used to the fact that you have to wear a mask every time you step outside, right? And you couldn't see your. Oh, I think it's a hugely stressful thing. It's probably really, really, really damaging even to healthy people, right? Just because of the
What
stress.
about assignments?
What about assignments? Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's stressful. That's why you try and fix it so that it's not too bad. Anyways, if we look at these personal stressors here, what it says, we shouldn't smoke or drink too much coffee. Yeah, all right. And there's your environmental stress. Anyways, I'm going to leave those there. You can think on those how you like. So how do we respond to stress? And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but your body actually releases different chemicals when you're under stress. So these, steroids, and they can be quite damaging to things like your heart and your circulatory system generally. And so too much stress can actually physically damage you really bad, just because your body is like attacking itself with these chemicals. Another one, of course, is the uh, release of adrenaline. But these chemicals that are in your body, they can be quite damaging. Now, so you might say, well, that's kind of dumb then. So why do we have them, right? What kind of of a thing are we that our body attacks itself when under stress? And I I mean the biologists have an answer to that, I suppose, is that humans didn't always live in such a um, organized sort of urban, big city environment. And a lot of the time, human beings lived in much more simple social structures with, a few people, like a band of like 10 people, and they're in a very sort of wild environment, and, a tree rustles. And there's a tiger behind the tree. Well, it would be good if you had some chemical that helped you to run or fight the tiger. And stress releases those chemicals that would allow you to sort of have more than your normal strength to run or fight the tiger. And so, yeah, human beings, that used to be a lot more common than it is. And then now we still have those chemicals from the time when our ancestors used to do a lot more of that running from or or towards tigers, I guess you could say. Um, so yeah, so how do we deal with that, right? So you could say we're nicely adapted to walking through the forest and fighting tigers, but maybe we're not so adapted to sort of sitting in an office and listening to angry customers shouting to us on the phone. So what do we do about it? Well, here's some things, a bit about attitude, reminding ourselves that the stressor. What I've found very useful in my life is to try and be a bit contemplative about it, and that is to sort of sit and think about it from time to time. And as I said, I just mentioned that thing about the ancestors, having a bit of a struggle, and not even that long ago. I mean, even 100 years ago. So I mean, just think about Qatar 100 years ago, no air conditioning. I mean, people were diving for pearls. I mean, it wasn't all that easy. Um, and so, when we look at our lives in that context, hey, life's not so bad. Maybe I'll just go and sit down and, have a hamburger that I ordered without having to go chase it down and relax and think that, maybe life's not so bad. So being a bit positive about it, realizing the context of our situation, sit in our air conditioned house and enjoy that, and realize that it's not really all that bad after all. Um, so here's some other things to think about. Accepting responsibility for stress. Uh, Burnout is a thing that we have to watch for. You'll know if you're getting burned out. Burnout sort of tips over into this thing called depression, and depression is a very, very serious thing. But the milder forms of depression at the start of burnout are just, people not able to cope in their work, not interested in their work anymore. And so if you start feeling like that, then you need to do something. Most organizations have somebody that you can talk to. About that in human resources, if you start feeling sort of that burnout coming on. So, okay, so knowing how to relax. I'm a really, really big fan of people having a hobby. I mean, something that is not the same as work. All right, that they do, and that they have friends that are not their colleagues, their work colleagues, and so that when they go and do this thing, they're just not doing work and just totally divorced from it. And I'm really lucky that I have that also in my life. So I probably some of you guys know that I go and ride motorcycles on the weekend. The people I ride motorcycles with, none of them are my colleagues, none of them are my students. It's just a other bunch of people. All we do is go out there and ride motorbikes as hard as we can, and we have a great time. And it's like I went to another planet, right? And then I come back and I just feel awesome, right? And then I can go and work. And so, that's a hobby. And I know there's lots of other people doing that kind of thing too. There's all kinds of groups you can join. Riding bicycles, riding motorcycles. Nope, not everybody's going to ride a motorcycle or a bicycle, but playing a sport. Sport's awesome, right? So soccer, or what football. Something like that, just a great way of sort of if you got involved in that, you got a team setting, you got something totally different. Now, those of you who do that, and I do that, you'll know that you get into the game, and I tell you what, during the game, the last thing you're thinking about is stress from work. I mean, you're just thinking about the game. And I mean, that's how it is with me with riding the motorcycle. I'll tell you what, out there on the sand dunes, riding along there, there's nothing about work that I'm thinking about. And yeah, so I mean, so now there's other things that are sort of related to that. I mean, so just looking at it, well, why is that so? How is it that doing this thing gets you so that you relax and get away from work? So, I mean, some people have said that stress is because we're thinking about the past or the future, and when we get into the present, then so we're stressed because we're worried about the future or we feel bad about the past. But when we're in the present, we realize that things aren't so bad. And so some people would say that when I'm riding my motorcycle really hard across the sand dune, at that moment, I'm not thinking about what I did 10 years ago that I feel bad about. I'm not thinking about the test that I got next week. I'm thinking about staying on top of that motorbike on the sand dune. And so that's
Sir,
focused
I have a
on the
question,
moment.
sir.
Yeah.
Do you still ride motorbikes in sand dunes? Like,
Every weekend.
oh,
Uh,
you do?
yeah. Every
Damn,
weekend.
that's nice.
So the point I'm trying to make there is that you can do that by something really physical. But I had a colleague when I was in Dubai, and he was telling me that he used to that this was the philosophy behind meditation, and I guess that's kind of maybe true. So the idea of the meditation was to empty your mind, and then and okay, so this country, many people are Islamic, and so the way that would relate to that, I suppose, would be 5 times a day you have an opportunity to pray. And so while you're doing that, that's what you're thinking about. You got something that you're in the moment, and that will reduce your stress. So I mean, there's lots of things that we can do, and there's some that I've just sort of suggested. For me, I love the motorbikes. That's uh, but it is normal, and it can be positive. The idea here, Who Moved My Cheese? This is a book that I read when I was back in about 2006. This fellow Spencer Johnson. The story was that there was these mice, and they used to go into this mine every day, and they walked down through the tunnel, and they got to the end of the tunnel. There was a bunch of cheese, and so that was their job: going down in the tunnel, get the cheese, and eat the cheese, and then they were happy, right? And then one day they went down into the tunnel mine, and they went to where the cheese was, and there's no cheese. And so what are they going to do? And after a while, they figured out that, well, what we'll do is we'll just go down another tunnel and we'll find some other cheese in a different place, and maybe it'll be a different kind of cheese. And so the idea was there that we live in a time when, unlike back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, when people get a job and they'd have that job for 50 years, and then they'd retire and they'd give them a gold watch and a pension, and thank you very much. It's not like that anymore. People have a job for 10 years or 5 years or whatever. A lot of people change jobs every 2 or 3 years, and so they're always going and finding something else. So the idea of that was that we need to be able to adapt quickly. That will help us to reduce and not be too afraid of things, I think. That brings us back to COVID again. Not be too afraid of things. Uh, Anyways, be flexible. Learning that be flexible and be ready to learn new stuff all the time. And, I mean, I'm a lot older than you guys, and I'm learning all the time. So, absolutely, you're going to have to learn all the time. If you can work a little bit quicker sometimes, you can give yourself a little bit of breathing space so that you've got time to do a little bit more or to take a bit of a rest. And so that's an important point that's made there. Learning how to project manage. So there's all kinds of tools that you've probably come across and seen, but you can manage a project, and you can use these tools, this ideas in your own life. just to get things done. I'm not going to say that that's my strong point, but it's certainly not an unknown sort of thing. And here's the one that I like: get physical. Physical is actually good for your mental, and it's good for the way that you feel. Get the blood moving, and you'll find that actually reduces the stress, and might actually make you live longer too. That'd be awesome. So there's some things that we can do: walking, eating right, taking breaks, have a bit of sense of humor. Isn't this fun? Drink water, not coffee. It's true. I like coffee, but water's better. There's some injuries that we could have. This was a big thing back in the 80s. Was People were doing a lot of typing because everything had to be typed in to get it into a computer system. Nowadays, we got other ways of getting stuff into a computer system. You can talk to a computer. But also you can scan and etc. But so nowadays, or sorry, the idea here was that people were getting injuries in their hands because they were doing too much typing. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. If you sit in a bad way, you can hurt yourself in your back. That's what I'm trying to show with this, right? So this person is trying to show us sitting in a good way back in 1985 or something like that, looking at that computer. All right, so I like to give real life anecdotes about the sitting and not. So I'm kind of old. I'm kind of older than you guys. So yeah, this is the common thing for people my age is we get a sore back, right? So this happened to me. I went on a holiday, and we have such wonderful holidays here working at the college. And thank you, College North Atlantic, for that. But it's one of these 8-week holidays, all July and August. And I rented this car, and I was driving around the United States. And so I drove all around the United States. I had a great holiday. But like every day I was driving, and I got comfortable in the car. I'm sitting back like that. And every day we're doing like 400 or 500 miles and just looking at all the places. Is really, really nice. And I came back to Qatar and went to work, and I had something I had to work on one of my motorcycles, and I bent over and I'm doing all this stuff on my motorcycle. And, afterwards I could not stand up. It's true. I could not stand up. And so I was walking around for a couple of days, sort of bent over like a 90-year-old or something. And this was like 10 years ago. And I have not had that problem since. And the reason why I haven't had that problem since is because I won't let myself sit in a seat like that. I don't sit like that anymore. And certainly not while I'm driving. I sit so that my back is straight and that there's no stress on my back. And I've never had a sore back since. But true story, I had a very, very sore back like 10 years ago, and I knew why it was. It's because I was sitting bad. And so, you guys are younger, you might not notice that, but just a hint, it might happen. Setting goals. If you set goals that are unachievable, that's going to be stressful. If you set goals that are too easy, well, then you're just going to blow them off, right? So goals give you a purpose in life. And when you achieve the goal, you get a great sense of, there's a good feeling when you achieve that goal. Okay, so I'm just going to skip through this stuff here about putting your things in the right way so that you don't get stressed at work. I hope that all makes sense to you. It is actually really quite important and true to sit in a way so that you're not sort of bent over too much one way or the other, because that is important. And then you need to sort of walk around a bit. Now, on the sitting thing, there has been a trend with some people is that they've actually changed their offices so that their desks are higher and they've taken the chairs out. And so people are standing up at their workplaces. So to me, I don't know if I'd like to be standing up all day, but apparently that is less stressful on the back. I don't know, or at least it builds up more strength in the back or something like that. Okay, so just there about being in your work, reducing your stress at work. What do I do to reduce my stress at work? If you could see my office at the moment, I come into my office and this is the COVID thing, right? I lock the door. Now, why do I lock the door? It's so that I can sit here without having to wear my mask, right? But it's also Yeah, by the way, you're all welcome to come and see me in my office. I do come to work every day and I sit in my office, but it gives me 3 seconds uh, before before somebody comes in, that to sort of collect myself, and so I'm ready to talk to them. Right, I have to get up, walk to the door, and open it up, and that helps to reduce my stress. I mean, but I'm a bit of an introvert. I don't really like to sit here with one person on this hand and one person on that hand all day long. Some people like that, I suppose, but I kind of like being here by myself, and of course seeing students also. But stay organized. Yep. So what you could do, there's some ideas there, and I'm not going to go through all of those one at a time. This thing here shows up a lot. Beginning of the day checklist. I don't know if what you're like, but for me, the beginning of the day, that's magic. I love the beginning of the day.